Hi, welcome to my channel where we provide an alternative view to the common narrative. Today I'm going to talk about a controversial subject, which is nuclear war. Can there be a World War III without nuclear weapons? And my answer is yes. And I will explain to you, if you have the patience. Nuclear weapons are there mostly as deterrents. And they are deterrents because they are weapons of mass destruction. A single warhead can maybe kill 100,000 people and flatten the whole city. And that is severe impact where you will need, you cannot even compare it to an artillery bombardment or an aircraft bombardment or something like that. It is just too gruesome and too massive, destructive to even consider from any point of view. Now you do get tactical nuclears which have a lot smaller yield and so on. Like, I mean, the Russians even have artillery rounds that have a yield of 0.3 tons. And as far, I'm not sure about NATO, but I know the Russians have it. And these are basically tactical nukes. But the problem with using nukes is that you don't know what the reaction would be of your enemy, who also has nukes. And if you use tactical nukes, they might decide, but that's it. They have no other choice, and they will also prepare to use tactical nukes. And when it starts, the one firing tactical nukes as on the other one, and you have whole armies being wiped out by a couple of tactical nukes, then it quickly escalates and we have an Armageddon. But there is a very important point to realize. Let's only talk about, say, Russia and America has nuclear weapons. Forget about France and England and India and Pakistan and North Korea or whatever, China. Both of them have clearly stated doctrines for when they will use nuclear weapons. The Russians clearly see it as a defensive last option weapon to be used. It clearly states that it will only use it when the enemy uses it, which I said tactical nukes will lead to Armageddon, to full-blown, somewhat type of intercontinental ballistic missiles. And if Russia is basically threatened as a nation, the complete existence of Russia itself is under threat. And that means, say, should there be an army, a conventional army approaching Moscow, and the rest of the government of Moscow has been destroyed, and every other sector and so on has been destroyed, and the very existence of Russia itself is on the line, then in the utter self-defense, Russia will release those weapons. I believe the Israelis have a similar doctrine of if they are existentially threatened, then they will use their 300 or 400 nuclear weapons that they deny exist. But in any case, we all know they do exist. So long as you play by those rules, Russia will not use their nuclear arsenal. So if you want to fight on a conventional basic Russia, don't use tactical nukes, don't cross the Russian border, and don't physically destroy Russian infrastructure to such an extent that it will become existential. Simple rules to follow. And as long as you follow those rules, there is no reason for Russia to actually press a button. In fact, then Putin, even if he gets crazy and decides we're going to lose the war, whatever, in the Ukraine or wherever, if it's in Belarus or wherever, he still is not allowed to use the nuclear weapons because the doctrine prohibits him from doing that. So there is no chance. Well, there is always chance because people are crazy and unpredictable. But on a theoretically basis, it shouldn't be possible for Putin to press any time those buttons if those conditions are not met. In the US, it's a little bit more complicated. They have not sworn off the first strike option. But they also have a doctrine that governs how they use their nuclear arsenal. So again, if you don't breach those arsenals, if you don't breach those guidelines, those protocols, those rules or whatever laws, whatever you're going to assert, then America cannot use its nuclear strike capability. And therefore, if a conflict arises between Russia and America, and then they can evade? No. Then, as long as they abide by these rules, there is no reason for any of these two parties to use a nuclear weapon option. And therefore, a conventional war can be fought between these two nations. And it is as simple as that. Will it ever happen? No. That's a debatable point. And I'll explain you. Is it possible? People are mad enough, but I don't think so. No, it all comes to the future arguments. But nothing is impossible and nothing is forever because people are unpredictable and people are sometimes idiotic and irrational and things like that. And there's always a chance, even if it's a minute, and even if there's 10 guys preventing one guy goes nuts, tries to press a button, 10 guys prevents him for some other stupid reason. He might just reach a button and there it goes. So, but that's all unlikely. So now the question arises basically, will there be a possible World War III between conventional forces of Russia and NATO itself? And I believe no. And the reason is quite simple. The US and the West, okay, let's call it the US first. The US has a huge army, a massive army. It has permanent members, say more than 1 million men. It has, say, 7,000 tanks. It has 3,000 fighter aircrafts. It has, I don't know what the numbers are, but it has a huge arsenal and ammunition and hardware and tanks and artillery pieces and aircrafts and aircraft bombers and refueling and navies and submarines and you name it, tomahawks and you name it, it's got all of that. So on a piece of paper, America is the biggest, strongest military on earth. And then you have Europe, which has a lot more smaller army and military equipment. For the simple reason is they didn't want to waste their money on military equipment, and they were quite happy to live under security blanket of the American military, but by them enslaving them and making them subservient to the Americans. And that is why we see all these self-inflicted harm that they are doing currently in Germany and the rest of Europe. But on the other side, you have Russia. Russia has a productive, fully operational, conventional war supporting military-industrial complex. It has advanced weapon systems that in many aspects are superior to American weapons systems. They don't have a navy that big, while they don't need it. And they have enough tanks, highly modern tanks, and they have a lot of manpower. People that went through conscription and can be called up at any stage and basically can create a fairly well-trained military structure. The quality of the officers and the quality of their tactics and so on, I'm not so sure about that. I know a lot of the pro-Russian commentators would like to praise the Russian command. I'm at this stage not that much convinced, but neither am I of the West or of the Ukrainians and so on. I'm actually fairly disappointed in the quality of their strategic military command structures, in their operational means and how they conduct this war. But that's beside the point. The thing is about the Americans is that they have never fought a war on their own soil. And they are protected by the Atlantic Ocean. Now, one can call that as a huge plus point, a benefit, sort of a protective barrier for the Americans. So they always fight on foreign soils, which is quite nice for them, because then they can maintain their industrial complex, their production capability, and they can support and provide weapon systems, and whatever is destroyed is another guy's country and infrastructure. But there is a problem with that. That's also a weakness. And the weakness is body bags. America cannot afford body bags under those circumstances, where the Russians do. They are committed. They do understand what's war about. They do understand sacrifice. They have been indoctrinated for 70 years about the Great War, the war against Germany in the Second World War. They have been brainwashed in order to be patriotic and to serve their country and die for their country. That is how it is. But not the West. The West has become docile, if that's the right word, complacent. They have garnered a lot of wealth, so they're living a good life, and they are quite happy and content in what they have. And if they have to fight, and then they will lose a lot, and they are not prepared to lose a lot what they have achieved over the last 70 years. What makes it for the Americans even worse is that you have to convince them to go fight, to sacrifice their lives in another country, protecting so-called American values, but actually protecting that other country's borders. So, if you send the American troops to Europe, they will argue they have to defend Europe against Russia and not defend America, because they are on European soil and not an American soil. And then the body bags come back, lots of them. And then will America be able to handle that? No. Under those circumstances, we'll be able to handle that, unless the Americans have nothing to lose. And unfortunately, they still have a lot to lose. And they have become weak in any case. I mean, if you look at, if you read some of the stories of the army trying to enlist American citizens, they find out that they're all obese or not fit enough, or they cannot be soldiers, and they have, I don't know, they just can't find any recruits, suitable recruits. They have to turn off the people away that actually wants to enlist, but they don't qualify for military service. So, and their wokeness about women and gay rights, and no. So the distance of Russia from any military conflict is, in a certain sense, a benefit, but also a curse. Like I said, you have to motivate your people to die on foreign soil, and that is very hard to do. And therefore, I don't believe that the Americans will send troops, or Europe will send troops in order to fight anything in Europe. And that is why Ukraine is actually The people of Ukraine are actually used as the soldiers for American interest. Not solely, I mean, the Ukraine also has an interest, but they share that, well, they share part of it with NATO. And in that respect, I don't believe there is a potential for a conventional war, like in the Second World War, but it will need a lot more men, a lot of more man equipment, because the era of mass armies has not vanished. You still need the big armies. You cannot fight on a small scale. There's no real point in it. Because the one will always escalate the other one. Technology just play a role and so on, it just makes it more difficult. And then counter, it's also like, when you look at the Russians, they don't mind that the West is sending weapons. And did anybody ever ask themselves why? They tolerate it. It's supposed to be a red line, but it's not. Because the quantities that the West is sending is so few that it will not have an impact on the battles or on the outcome of the war. But it does give the Russians an opportunity to study these weapons, capture them if necessary, and reverse engineer and see what their capabilities are. But not only that, they can also then develop countermeasurements, like they adjusted their air defense systems to pick up the HIMARS and what's the English one now? Sparrows, eh? Yeah. And they adjusted now. So now they have updated their software and their air defense system, and they have basically can eliminate those type of threats. So they're quite happy to go with it. It doesn't make that so big influence. Even all these UIV attacks of Ukrainians on Russian territory and infrastructure and Sevastopol fleet and so on, those are all harassment. It serves no purpose, just like it's a pain in the butt, and that's what it is. In any case, I thought I'll address this issue. Hopefully I'm not wrong, but in any case. So if you enjoyed the video, please subscribe if you haven't. Tell your friends. It's nice. Yes, I know I won't, but it's nice to see a bigger number at the viewers numbers and so on. And then until next time then, cheers.